Okay, so if you're a regular subscriber and you've just been watching my videos for a minute, you'll know I have a daily upload schedule, or not even really a schedule, but at least uploading videos on a daily basis. And yeah, it's just been a lack of uploads for the new people, and it's like, yeah, I'm sorry for that. But yeah, I just had a lot of final exams because I am in college right now, and I was just living life. I mean, it was like the end of the semester, and I'm like, well, finally, like, I've been doing all this studying, and yeah, finally get to have some fun. And yeah, just be late at night. I'm like, dang, like, I still gotta make a video, and I'm like, I'll get to it tomorrow, and then pretty much never get to it. So, I mean, I know I wasn't really uploading or anything, but yeah, I was still trying to make sure I was good at the same time since, like I said, it was late at night. So yeah, I need to get my rest. And yeah, here I am now. Yeah, summer vacation. So yeah, hopefully I can get as much as I can out. I'm gonna still take it slow a little bit starting off. And I may have some other periods or times to where it may be like 2 days without uploading 3 days. But for now, I'm gonna just try and get as many requests in as I can, and yeah, just move on from there. So starting off with this Fate X Tsukihime crossover you never knew about. So yeah, from Saya. And yeah, we have a good 40 minutes. So yeah, that's why this one's a little bit late. Yeah, because I think, yeah, someone requested this to me at least a week ago, and I'm like, yeah, this was a little bit longer. And yeah, I didn't want to just give you guys like two parts. Yeah, I want to just sit here and look at it all together. But yeah, other than that, that should be about it. So I hope you guys will enjoy this. And yeah, this may not really matter for people like later on watching these videos, but still, just in case it happens again, you guys will know, and it most likely will happen. But yeah, just letting you guys know. But yeah, I hope you guys will enjoy this. Make sure to like, subscribe, and yeah, let's get this reaction started.
Listen, man, we here. So as of late, I've been getting quite a few Tsukihime requests, which we're loving, by the way. Keep it coming. We need that balance. And before we get off into those, one thing that I felt I had to address is a manga that came out way back. The manga that you probably never knew about. It's a Fate and a Tsukihime crossover that came out around 2005. And though it's been put in front of my face quite a few times, this is actually my first time going through it myself. And I wanted to just hit some of the high points of it in the first couple of chapters just to see where they went with it. And it's called T-Moon Complex, in case you guys wanted to check this out. A crossover series from Type Moon between Tsukihime and Fate Stay Night. The events follow the visual novel of both and take place after Hollow Ataraxia. Now, the premise for the manga, in the most literal sense, you have
so 1 year, okay,
the characters from Fate Stay Night. You got characters like Shiki and Arkaway from Tsukihime, and then you even have characters from Melty Blood pulling up like Scion. So one of the first things that I noticed, and it's pretty complimentary to the time that it came out, is that it's centered around the time of Hollow Ataraxia, which is the sequel to Stay Night. By this point, Shuro had already lost his original body, so Kirei isn't here because he died. You have people like Kid Gil being present, and people like Kirei's daughter, Karin, who's now running the church in his place, Medusa in her casual form, even Bazette. It really just brings me back to the time where I first read Hollow Ataraxia, and even though it's a loop that's being manufactured, it's just nice to see all these different characters all in one place. And these characters are immediately conscious of that as well. They know what's going on. As far as seasons go, you can tell that it was around Christmas. They got the big Christmas tree down.
I like that, yeah, just everybody casual, yeah, hanging out.
All meet up, and they had planned to go shopping for food. And Kid Gil decides to serve everybody. He uses his gate of Babylon for good and provides everybody with a
Gil using that for good,
this
yeah.
Is a Christmas present from him. Consider this a part of his kingly nature. A part of me was caught by surprise. And by the way, this isn't written by Nasu, but it's written and illustrated by a different author, Usuikin. So taking that into consideration, all of this is from their perspective. All of this is Type Moon from the way that they're looking at it. And to see Gil handled in this way, if you haven't seen Ataraxia yourself, you might be thinking, oh, he would never do that. But even in things like Prisma Ilya, you can see that Gil will come down for things like this.
Yeah, that's the only time from Prisma Ilya
where he can flex his ability or flex his treasures, so to speak. If you've seen my Don't Sleep on Gil, I mentioned how the man pulled out an entire hot spring out of nowhere, just straight out the gate. So he will do this, contrary to belief. I just don't want people who haven't seen the work artwork to think that this is out of character just because they don't really understand why he did it, and they're just basing it off of regular Gil, or they're basing it off of Caster Gil. As a matter of fact, to bring it back to something that's even more accessible, if you remember the Banquet of Kings back in Fate Zero, who was the one that provided the wine for
yeah, he
everybody
did
to
do
drink?
that.
It was Gil, simply to flex on everybody about how good his stuff was. So you don't even gotta ask if this is accurate because he's already done it multiple times. Kid Gil is moving entirely different. He's a lot more sociable, so to speak, especially with the likes of Shuro in the main squad. He's much more likely to find them tolerable because he's not concerning himself with asserting his authority as much as his older self. So I really like the fact that the artist did that. So you got people like Taiga and Sakura getting drunk and passing out, and then the drinks come to Shiro, and we all know how Shiro is.
Yeah, just like hold up, y'all got the.
So he's thinking, well, you know, somebody has to be responsible. Not only that, but I got two of my teachers sitting right in front of me because Kazuki is there also. He doesn't want to look a certain way in front of Taiga and Kazuki, and meanwhile they're in the back saying, bro, we really don't care, you can do what you want to do. And they even poke little jabs at Shiro saying that he's too reserved. You know, sometimes you just got to kick back and enjoy yourself, which is a big part of the learning arc for his character, right? Shiro's entire existence has always been working hard to achieve that magecraft state that he's always been told that he couldn't. So throughout his lifetime, you can especially see it in situations like this. He hasn't really given himself the leg room to be this lax, and so at times it's hard for him to shake off that mental state. Things like this, I would argue, is really good for him. This also leads me into a part, or more so of a segue into another thing that I really like about this manga, is that it kind of gives us a speculatory view of a Fate Stay Night 2, or a lead up into Fate Stay Night 2, because it's kind of where this is positioned. We already know about what happened before, we already know about what happened in Ataraxia, but where do the future of these characters lie? What are they doing? How are they getting better? What have they learned? And as I progressed through it even more, these are some of the big questions that I kept asking myself. Okay, I know it hasn't been that long, not even a whole year after Fate Stay Night, but if these characters were to go through that entire war and remain exactly who they were before, then it's all useless. Now granted, even though they're just coming off the back of the war, I do want to see these characters having those reflections on what they just experienced. I do kind of want to see them bend and mature from that, and we definitely got a lot on that. And not only did we get that, but I feel like they addressed certain things to a T, like Sakura still having her connection to Angra, for example. I thought the emergence that they did with that was really clever, because instead of the route that it took with Hollow Ataraxia, where she's keeping these emotions sort of pacified, the fight with CL, by the way, CL does show up also, Curry Senpai in the building, she shows up and gets in a fight with Medusa. But the problem is, Medusa has no idea about the burial agency and how militant these people are, CL included. And so in this fight, Medusa is actually getting worked by CL. It's even making references to CL's holy scripture. And when Medusa mid-fight realizes that CL is way more skilled than she looks, she decides to pull out her Pegasus, only to have Medusa get blasted by CL's pile bunker, which looks crazy to see it all go down. And you have to consider this, if this is 2005, this is before the remake where CL gets buffed even more. Now, I've seen conversations that address this exact circumstance. A long time ago, prior to the remake of Tsukihime, you know, there's always going to be a little back and forth between the fandom. Well, can people like CL take on servants? You know, she's out here fighting dead apostles, she's out here fighting all these odd things. Would her going against the average servant be a realistic scenario for her? He did an interview. In other Type Moon works, who else besides art can fight against servants? If we're working on the condition of one-on-one with an extremely average noble phantasm, generally most of the 27 seven ancestors, Kishima Koma and Aoko Aozaki, could do their thing. If it's just a defensive fight, but would still be a fight, then we can say CL. So here's the problem that most people had with the fight in this manga. People are saying if Medusa went as far to pull out Pegasus, the Pegasus, one of the highest phantasmal beasts that you can have, we wouldn't call that average. And so they're pointing the finger at the artist to say, hey, this can't be accurate. Now, taking the time frame into consideration, Pegasus would have for sure been the pinnacle, right? But by today's standard, after all the things that we've seen, after all the things that have come out 20 years after the fact, are we still calling Pegasus the pinnacle? Are we really? I just say this in hindsight and thinking about
you just gotta think about that.
Medusa myself, because even in my Don't Sleep, I ranked Anna at a C, I ranked Medusa at a B, and I gave Gorgon an A. At least the Gorgon that we get is.
Actually, I don't even think I saw his Medusa one, so I'll look at that later.
As someone in the B tier,
well, not right now, but yeah, later.
Pegasus as average, which is crazy to say, but we have seen things much greater as of late. It may have been the pinnacle then when there was nothing else, but now it's kind of like, I mean, we've seen Bazette deal with Pegasus. Granted, servant cards are a portion of the original strength of the original servants, but the fact still remains that Bazette dealt with Pegasus, and she dealt with Pegasus quite easily.
Yeah, she was putting that work.
At that point, Pegasus starts to look kind of weird, when honestly that shouldn't be the case. Hell, even if we use the real Pegasus in Heaven's Field, when Shiro and Medusa had to jump Salter, okay, when they used Pegasus, all they could do was stop Saber for a portion of time. It wasn't like anything that Pegasus did in that moment was definitive. Mind you that Medusa is also under Sakura, so it's not even like you can pull that card for her. And even in that scene, it was made very apparent that Shiro would have to whack her in that very moment, or she would get back up. The same thing that she told him in Sparks Liner High. Since you couldn't finish the job, I'm just gonna get back up. The way I'm looking at it, in terms of CL beating Medusa, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. I will start off by saying that I disagree with the average opinion of saying that it doesn't make sense, but I will say that it does walk over the idea of it being a defensive fight, because once she pulls out her holy scripture, it kind of inherently becomes more than defensive. Like, CL only pulls that shit out when she's about to go to work, literally. And if you've been through it, you know that. Like, she only pulls that out when she's getting super serious. So at that point, you have already exceeded it being a defensive fight. I will give the people that much credit. But to say that CL can't beat Medusa because she's a servant, we be lying, and you don't know CL. And yes, I'm saying this with the old CL before she got buffed. I think that she would still beat Medusa in the state that she's in, especially considering that as a worker for the burial agency, she does this for a living. You have to understand the positions and the context. Medusa hasn't been fighting. She's been lax for a while. She's been chilling. She's been taking care of Sakura. She hasn't been in the field like Bazette. She hasn't been in the field like...
Okay, so sorry about that. Just like it was lagging a little bit on my part. So yeah, I don't know about you guys. It was probably still smooth or something. But yeah, I didn't want that to continue for like 30 more minutes. Yeah, just seeing that laggy footage. So hopefully it should be better now. And yeah, if I have to do it again, then yeah, I'll just make another cut or something. But other than that, let's just continue on here. I think I went, yeah, back
like
for 5
she
seconds.
Hasn't been in the field like CL. So when CL catches her off guard and she's been doing all this work and she's ready for a battle, it makes complete sense for her to be defeated. Now, here's the other thing. Why is CL there in the first place? Well, in respect to
she just kind of showed up.
Two worlds, he's kind of weaved in the storylines of Fate and Tsukihime. There's this vampire in the city of Fuyuki. They're roaming around. Nobody knows who it is. It just started to happen, and this has brought all of these circumstances together. It's brought Shiki and Arkaway to go hunt down the vampire. It's caused the church to send out CL to go check out what's going on. It's caused Sion to pull up and look for Tono. All of this in mind, while I do agree with the way that this fight was portrayed, I can tell that the bias towards Tsukihime is way greater than it is for Fate. And you can tell by the way that this is written. I feel like there's certain things that if you're leaning onto the side of being a Fate fan more, you wouldn't write it this way. And this became even more evident where you have the infamous Shiki versus Shiro battle. Because I know a lot of people love to go back and forth about that argument. Whether or not Shiki and Shiro could go against each other, how would the fight play out, who would have more.
Oh, here we go, right?
And the artist does give us an example of that fight. You know, I've kind of glossed over Tono a little bit, not enough for people to know exactly what he's capable of in his entirety, but I put out more than enough to know that he's not somebody to play with. And you can tell that the artist believes that Shiki would run through Shiro. If I'm just being straight up, when they first interact with each other, they meet up in the alleyway. We'll get into the reason later. Shiro gets mad at Tono and tries to go for an attack. Well, this is post Stay Night, right? And so Shiro has all of the experiences of the war that went down prior. However, he is now restricted to only using his capabilities. What does that mean? That means he doesn't have Archer's arm. That means that he doesn't have Ren's temporary crest that he got in UB-Dub. Things like that. However, he still tries to take on a fight with Tono, not knowing exactly what he is. As a matter of fact, he thought Tono's knife was a phantasm because he has no ideas about the mystic eyes of death. That's something that's outside of his realm that hasn't been brought to him yet. So he tries to initiate this battle with Tono. He pulls out his Kansho and Bakia, and Tono is literally just killing the swords that Shiro pulls out before he even proceeds to be a threat. Like, he's literally just chopping Kansho and Bakia in half, which is accurate. And by the way, all of these things are accurate. I hate to pretend like this couldn't be the case. It's kind of a conversation for people that's only been through both. If you've been through Tsukihime, you know he can actually do these things. You know, things like that, it's gospel. He's chopping through Kansho and Bakia. Cool. Shiro realized he's more of a threat than he thought he was. So Shiro decides to pull out his reality marble. Unlimited Blade Works.
Unlimited Blade Works.
This is the part that I found to be a little bit weird. And it kind of brings up the conversation that people always love to throw in. Well, which route is it following? And I feel like people that bring this up kind of out themselves as not having read Ataraxia, because if you have, you know that it prioritizes Heaven's Field, obviously, because Shiro has to die for these circumstances to be the case, but it for sure does take other things from the other routes into account. So if we're going off of the canon of what actually went down in the original Stay Night, this means that Shiro doesn't have that connection that he had to Ren in UB-Dub, which would in fact allow him to cast the reality marble. He doesn't have Archer's arm, which we've never seen him use the reality marble from Archer's arm anyway, but even if he did have it, we could entertain the thought. This is just regular Shiro in that puppet body that he got in Heaven's Field. So the only way, and this is something that's really more so just coming to me now, the only way that Shiro would be able to cast UB-Dub at this point in time is if we're following the canon of Heaven's Field, where the incomplete magic of Shiro becoming a perpetual motion machine were true, and he was able to go around and go past his limits, which is not what happened. Ilya only used the incomplete version, so in actuality, if Shiro is going down his normal trajectory, he shouldn't even be able to use his reality marble right now. He should still be learning it. So that alone already has me looking at this scenario a little fishy. But let's say we completely ignore that part of the canon and we give him the perpetual motion machine aspect. Well, then you have other plot holes, because if Shiro is operating off an infinite amount of energy, then what happens after the fact shouldn't deal to be an issue. Shiro summons his reality marble, and immediately after he pulls it out, and it's so funny the way they did it, because I damn near want to say it's almost identical to the Master Grail War that I did. Which is funny because, like I said before, I've never read this. So he kind of did the same thing without me even knowing. Shiro does the little chant, he pulls out his UB-Dub, and Shiki literally kills the reality marble the moment that he pulls it out.
That instant, okay.
He didn't even get it off all the way. And that's kind of exactly what I did in the war with him going against Bazette. You know, I had him do the chant in this pseudo zombie form, and then he got blazed by Bazette with her Froggerot, because she can actually do that once he starts to activate his move. That's just the nature and the way that Froggle Rock works. And again, to provide a little more context to that, she's done it to people stronger than Shiro. She's done it to Saber. She's done it to Ku. So for her to do it to Shiro is nothing, because I know a lot of people were upset about that. There's no way that can happen. I mean, if you actually read Ataraxia, yes the fuck it is. I know you don't want to see it. I know you don't want to hear it.
They just don't want to believe it. That's all.
That definitely can happen, as crazy as that might sound. But spinning back to this circumstance, what I don't like is this position that you put Shiro in the first place. It's like, okay, if Shiro is pulling out his reality marble, you could at least give him the benefit of the doubt to say that he would make it difficult for Shiki to kill the reality marble. That's what I don't like. If we're gonna run this fight, at least make it somewhat realistic. Now, we all know that Shiki can actually kill the marble. That's not even a question. He can for sure kill the marble. That's just the way that his character works. That's just the way that his mystic eyes work. And by this point in time, if we're talking post Tsukihime, his eyes are even more powerful than they were before. And once again, just like CL, this is pre him getting buffed even more in the remake. He definitely could have did it back then. He's taken out reality marbles before when he was weaker. Nero Chaos had a reality marble, for example. So it's not anything unfamiliar. My thing is, if you're gonna give Shiki the win, he has to work for it. I don't mind Shiki winning at all, but you're not just gonna let him have the win, because that would never happen on either side, whether it was him or Shiro. There's never been an instant where they just don't work for their win, at least in part. Maybe there's somebody present, maybe there's a different circumstance present, fine, but they always in part work for their own wins. So that is disingenuous unless he's just trying to rush through the situation. When it comes to the fight itself, do I think Shiki can beat Shiro? Absolutely. I think they can beat each other. I think anybody that has enough information between the two knows that. It's just a matter of how the fight goes down, and that's when it gets a little more complex. In a situation like this, I feel like though I know for a fact Shiki can kill the marble, I feel like Shiro was done a little unfairly because he never even really got the chance to defend himself before it spent all this time gassing up Shiki. And even when he got out of the marble, you kind of have Shiro just submitting to defeat and Shiki kind of just asserting this overall dominance throughout the entirety of the scene. Even though Shiro went through all the things that he went through, right? He's supposed to have developed as well. It's almost like you're ignoring all of his progression, but you're keeping Tono's. I don't like that. And if you're truly operating on that perpetual motion machine aspect, because that will be the only way he would even be able to summon the reality marble at this point, then he would just be able to bring the reality marble back up again. So that's also inconsistent. Right here, he just accepts the loss and he's in shock. As far as my position between the two characters, if I'm being honest, I rock with Tono. Now, do I like Shiro more? They've always kind of been neck and neck for me, but I will say that Shiro gets him a little bit more, only because I feel like Shiro is in my face more. Like, they don't give Shiki anything, so it's kind of hard for me to perpetuate that love for that character when they never do anything to exemplify that. You know, the Tsukihime remake was the first thing that we got Tono anything in a long time, and even now it's been a long time since that came out and we haven't really gotten anything since. We're still waiting on the other half. So yeah, I do favor Shiro a little bit more, but I would never cut my boy Tono short to say that he couldn't handle Shiro. He for sure can. In this case though, there's either one or two things. I feel like the artist was maybe trying to get through their powers really fast and he just picked a side and he ended up choosing the Tono side to be the dominant because, like I said, it had to be somebody. Or like I said before, there's just a little more favor towards the Tsukihime side of things, which I'm leaning more towards because all of the Tsukihime
just destroying it right away.
Really good, and it's more so of the fake characters that's looking kind of crazy. Could be a coincidence, maybe I'm tripping, but that's just the way that I'm taking it in, because between Medusa, between this fight, between the thing that happens before this fight, because that's not all. So why did Shiro attack Shiki in the first place? Well, Shiro was pissed off that Shiki ran through Heracles, and that's the thumbnail for the entire video itself. Ilya pulls up to the back alley where they are, and she decides to get a jump on Shiki and Arkaway early by attacking with Hurt. But what Hurt didn't know, and what honestly nobody knew at the time, is that Shiki is really like that. This man is a goon.
Cut him off
Straight through Heracles. Heracles in an instant. Again, a lot of people have problem with the way
with just simple old knife
too.
too.
Tell you, as a person that's been through both works very thoroughly, this can happen. This is a real scenario. I don't think people understand that Tono is like the motherfucking boogeyman, and this isn't even really his full potential. I was not joking when I said Shiki is like King Hassan before King Hassan was even a thing. Like before these new dudes got introduced to King Hassan, Tono was already on that. That's why you hardly see me even gassing it up, because I know it's just a reiteration of things that he's already done. But all of this Azrael being an angel of death, all of that is fate additions that were made on top of his character that didn't exist beforehand. And if we're talking about characters existing beforehand, Tono does predate King Hassan by like 15 years. So yeah, this is true to it as true to it gets. And by the way, we know for a fact, I mean, even if you just use the Caliburn instance from the Fate route by example, that you can take all of Herc's lives in one shot. And he did exactly that. You know that he can go through all those lives in one shot if he's given the opportunity. That's what we have here. Again, is this showing a little more favor to the Tsukihime side than it should have? Possibly. I mean, it's not unrealistic to say that Herc is in his berserker form, so he's just gonna rush in indiscriminately for an attack. He's not really gonna think or plan things out. That's just the restriction, that's the standard that that character has. So he would actually jump into his death like that. The big discussion around this, and the reason that the artist put this fight in general, is because of Nasu. Majority of the pushback of either Shiki being able to kill servants comes from the interview with Nasu himself. He says either Shiki, whether that be Garden of Sinners or Tsukihime, are no match for servants. But Ryogi Shiki, her third personality, or in other words, her void form, might be able to go as far as Ciel. And so you got a lot of people in contention with these statements, just basing it off the things that both Shikis have done, especially Tono, prior to the remake. Personally, I'm gonna call cap on that. I completely disagree. I don't disagree with the interviews all the time, but there are times where it's like, is that really true? For me, I'm not asking whether or not Shiki can take down a servant when he killed Arkaway when the story first started. And that's the weird thing to me. That's why I can't even have the conversation. I be seeing people go so hard for this argument, and I'm like, are y'all really having this debate? Like, we didn't just see what happened? So for me, it's not even really a discussion. Again, and I'll get into this later, sometimes the creators get into these interviews and they just are trying to get through them. They're just trying to give people what they want. But yeah, I disagree with that. I think any Shiki can kill a servant, void or not. As a matter of fact, if you want to be trill about it, back in Fate Extra, when Ryogi killed 99 servants in a row and told the protagonist that you'd be my 100, that's an incredible feat on its own, by the way, because again, as I mentioned before, it's understood that Shiki just walked out of Kara no Kyokai and into the Fate worlds and started to go to work. Now, evidently, it was the void form that actually got her into the world, because you're transcending into another space, and that treads upon void territory. But when we actually get her up front, I don't know what form she's in, because it looks like she's in her base form to me. At that point, before she gets officialized as a servant, is she in her servant form? Is she in her base form? Or is this her void form? Because Fate has always went out of its way to make the distinction on when Shiki is entering her void form. Yet at this point, y'all didn't decide to do it here. You know what I mean? So it looks kind of weird. For all I know, Shiki was in her base form when she killed all those servants, and then Fate recognized her as a person. I don't know. And no one can prove whether or not it's true or false. It's like, well, which one came before, the chicken or the egg deal? So you got Tono taking out a true ancestor at the beginning of the story, which is higher than a servant. A servant would essentially be a fake Arkaway. You got Ryogi hypothetically being in her base form, taking out nearly 100 servants, and you're trying to sit here and tell me that it has to be Void Shiki to take on a servant, even though Void Shiki is superior to a servant anyway? Huh? So they're just saying anything, I believe. Can Shiki survive getting hit by her?
Oh no, you
Probably
can get back.
not. But this is the third time in a row that you got Tsukihime characters looking quite phenomenal, which, hey man, I like both series, so you can't make me mad. I'm here for it. But if you're only a Fate fan, you probably looking at this manga like, you know, I get it. And that's the thing. I'm one of the few people that obviously I'm more fate aligned. You know, it's the same situation as Shiki and Shuro. I'm more fate aligned because fate is in my face more. I do think Tsukihime had a lot of potential that never got explored because fate got so popular. But all in all, I will never be one of those dudes that, oh, I like fate, so I hate Tsukihime. Or I like Tsukihime, so I hate fate. Fate took all the shine from Tsukihime, now people will never know. I'm not one of them dudes. They'll forever be salty. I like both of them a lot. One thing I'll always say about Tsukihime that I liked even more is that I didn't think I would like it. I was convinced that fate was the only thing I would like from him. But I was like, you know what? I went through the entire fate novel. I might as well give Tsukihime a chance. And it turns out I like that shit a lot, actually. And I feel like a lot of those concepts fell on deaf ears for people that never got to experience it. And it really is a shame. So I will give those people a credit on that to some degree. But I mean, hey, there's nothing stopping them from continuing Tsukihime. There's nothing stopping them from giving us a Tsukihime collab that we've literally been asking for several years. And lo and behold, we get Mihoyo first. Holy. I'm hearing that it's because we got the Mihoyo novel first, so people have had time to kind of sit with the characters. The Tsukihime remake did technically release before the Mihoyo remake, but it didn't come out in its entirety, and Mihoyo did. For the Tsukihime remake, we're still waiting on Red Garden, so Mihoyo's story is actually complete. So it kind of makes more sense.
I'm gonna try and get more into this right here. I already know the main character, sort of, but
give such little praise to Tsukihime.
let me figure out everybody else.
Expected. I mean, even as I make this video, and this is just prior to LB7, I don't know what's going on, but I see a lot of people say that they didn't do anything with Archetype Earth, even though she's in FGO. She's kind of just in FGO for the novelty of being in FGO, and that's the type of shit that I hate. You know, there's a lot of characters like that, and it really is a shame that they did that with her, if that is the case. Again, JP people know more than me, because for a character like Arkaway, for a character like Archetype Earth, she should have one of the most robust rollouts out of everybody, non-negotiable. And even before you had Tono take out Herc, you had Arc just swat Herc's head off with her bare hand like she's playing tennis. But again, it is Arc, very realistic situation. If she really decides to get on that type of timing, there's nothing that Herc can do with her. There is nothing that Herc can do with her when she's in her bag. Personally, I thought it was funny. Like, you gotta know how crazy they out here making them look. Tono and Arkaway, I mean. And that's kind of the whole scene. Like, they just look good the entire scene and then it's over. I'm like, wow, that's wild. As a matter of fact, they have Shuro looking even more foolish when one of the reasons that he got mad at Tono is because Heracles attacked him. But he's getting mad at Tono because he killed Heracles. And Tono told him, it's like, bro, he attacked me. I was just defending myself. And
yeah,
like,
got him looking stupid.
That's
like,
kind of how it went. So it's further doing things to make Shuro look kind of silly. And honestly, prior to the 5th Grail War, I wouldn't be so against that because he is real sporadic like that. That's just in his nature. But considering that he went through the war and everything that he's learned by now, you got to give him some credit of growth to say, okay, maybe Heracles and Ilya shouldn't have done that. You got to give him some better dialogue than that, because I don't know what that was. And you know, it's funny because even Saber and Ren were speaking about the magnitude of Arkaway's power and her being a true ancestor. Well, Saber didn't actually know what she was, but she could sense how strong she was just being around her. But Ren knew what she actually was. And so just thinking about that, the introduction as to the way that the scene starts is just funny in and of itself.
Did you just say stupid woman? Yo, okay.
Calling Arkaway an idiot, and everybody is just in shock to see that he's handling Arkaway like that, not knowing of their previous relationship. It's like these people just don't know Arkaway is going to war and back for this man, and everybody else is realizing real time that Shuro isn't the only one with the harem around here. Now granted, both of their harems combined doesn't compare to Ritsuka's, but he's not the only one is the case I'm making. So the reason that the scene started in the first place is that Shuro squad decided to go out to investigate these murders that are taking place by this dead apostle.
Yeah, I could tell they're trying to ask like, are you the vampire? Like, what's going on here?
Gas leaks for a first time. First time y'all are able to do it without gas leaks. I'm proud.
Okay.
And they go into the alleyway, him, Saber, and Ren, and the first thing they see is all of these dead bodies, not realizing that they're actually the minions of the dead apostle. And they start to attack. Saber and Ren gear up to fight back. But remember, Shiro's nature is thinking of it like, wait, these are actually people. I really love that part because it's really taking Shiro's actual character into account. You remember we did the video about what if Shiro is in the FGO, and that's one of the first things that I thought of. And a lot of people were like, well, Shiro's not gonna make it that far because just look at who he is as a character. Now, I think Ritsuka's ability to make friends is kind of bullshit. It's kind of mostly because he's the main character. But the thing about Shiro and him not being able to face certain situations because
that's what.
Perspective wouldn't allow him to do so. That's a real.
I'm like,
thing.
why did
And that's
Saber
the thing
attack
that's
someone?
actually taking
Yeah,
his
here it
character
is.
into consideration. And so everybody is getting ready to fight. Shiro is stun locked, and that's when Arkaway comes in and she just wastes all the dead in the alleyway. And Shiro immediately gets pissed off at this because he's like, wait a minute, these are actually people. What the fuck is wrong with you? Not knowing that she's an ancestor, and beyond her being an ancestor, Arkaway does not care. Like, she's already said it before. She could go through the city right now and have all of this done with. One of the only reasons that she dealt with Tono is because she found him interesting. But at a moment's notice, she could have had Tono hung up on a clothesline like anybody else if she really wanted to. And that's something that Shiro wouldn't know, and he would have to come to understand as he's meeting this character. Again, we've never actually had them officially meet each other. Technically, this will be a fanfic with actual publishing, and this isn't written by Nasu. So I would imagine those interactions to be very similar.
Not made by the original.
Or keeping it traditional to how these characters actually are. Arkaway doesn't care about wasting somebody. Even if these people weren't the dead, that's not Arkaway's problem because she's not somebody that turned dead apostle. She's not somebody that has something to do with human affairs. She's truly a different race entirely. She's an extension of the planet. Her job is to protect the planet. If anything, she's a defense mechanism against entities like humans because that's what that part of the counterforce is for. It's for to go against, entities like humans that are trying to dominate the planet and destroy Earth. Ark's job is to protect Earth. She doesn't give a fuck what humans got going on, and that's something that he has to get. So as just as his feelings might be in that situation, her side is equally as just considering what she is. I thought that was really good. I do like the foundation for the way that the stories are weaved because it's not something that's really all that out of the ordinary for Nasu. Somebody's a murder suspect.
I got it colored. Okay.
Hunt this person down. That's very Tsukihime-ish. That's very Fate-ish. Those are scenarios that actually happen on both sides. So you can't even say that this wouldn't go down. This is a very realistic confrontation or a way to bring things together. When it comes back to Medusa getting defeated,
I forgot all about that.
Part of the reason why they did this is to give the showcase that happens afterward with Sakura turning into Dark Sakura, which I also kind of enjoyed. And let me explain why. We've seen Medusa several times. She has several different iterations, barely seen Dark Sakura at all. And I mean the main Sakura. I don't mean like Prisma Ilya or Unlimited Codes or whatever you want to go pull out. I mean main
just pull it up.
Dark Sakura. She wasn't around for that long, and even when she was around, she ended up losing to the moral victory. Shiro hits her with the rule breaker, takes her out the form. So if I'm looking at the reasoning for the way that he wrote it like this, I kind of agree with him in the sense that, well, we've had plenty of Medusa. Even back in 2005, we've had more Medusa than Dark Sakura. So I'm sure he's looking at it like, well, I'm gonna use this opportunity to flip it. Let's make Medusa look like she needs Sakura, and then Sakura goes into her dark form so we can get a little bit more of that. Now at that point is when CL starts to get bodied because most people can't contain the shadow. As a matter of fact, Emiya was also there because you have to remember this is following the scheme of Ataraxia, so all of these servants are still around. Emiya pulls up, and just like it was in Heaven's Field, servants cannot get near that shadow, and that shadow is a part of Sakura. So Sakura is a natural enemy to a servant. servant. I'd imagine that against an actual servant, they will get obliterated while she's dressed in the shadow, because then it would have a proper vessel. So Sakura goes dark and she obliterates CL. I mean, she Swiss cheesed her, which, you know, it was funny to watch, but it's also even funnier to watch knowing that CL has also been through much worse and then some. So as I'm watching it happen, I'm like, yo, and I immediately shifted to the thought of Sakura's gonna be even more surprised when she finds out that this doesn't kill her. Cause it's like, yo, the church has done so much to CL. Going through that was just par for the course. And the story even has the shadow start to somewhat take over Sakura's mind in a similar fashion to the way that it did in Heaven's Field, where she kind of can't control her feelings and the shadow is kind of just using her as a vehicle. It still takes all of that into account. And so what ends up happening is Medusa ends up sacrificing herself to calm Sakura down while she has the shadow in that form. And knowing that servants can't get near the shadow, it doesn't say this outright, but the idea is that Medusa gave up her life in order to pacify the situation and get Sakura back to normal. And you even have Sakura after the fact, once she goes into this form, she's reflecting on the events that she did or she partook in Heaven's Field, kind of going back into that portion of the story. Oh, I can't believe Medusa had to sacrifice herself. Oh, I killed all those people. I can't believe y'all even put up with me. It was really a dope moment of reflection for her character, because a lot of people like to pretend like that shit just didn't happen. Like, I never said Sakura was innocent, and a lot of people that may have wrote this story would act like she had no parts in what happened in Heaven's Field. Don't get the story twisted. The shadow did take advantage of her emotions, but we know that Sakura still wanted something to happen. So she's not entirely faultless either. I just hate when they try to give her all the blame. So again, given a lot of nods to the original works and the original progression, that's kind of what I want to see. You know,
yeah.
And if we were
that's
to
what I was thinking about. He wanted to see this, right? So here you go.
See a progression of both
that
sides
reflection
of the
and all
characters, of the protagonist and all the other characters.
Okay,
from
Ren, yo.
stories. You know, give me Shiro going into Fate Stay Night 2. Give me Tono going into Tsukihime 2, because we never seen that. You know, the best that we have is things like Talking Prelude, or as far as Shiro goes, the best that we have is El Malloy, but even El Malloy is its own thing. I would like to see how it would really go down. But honestly, all of these different things, for better or worse, this is a really enjoyable piece. And as far as Emiya showing up, you know, you kind of had them flirt with the concept of him coming back to be a counter guardian, but this time he was a counter guardian against Shiro and his people. And this is yet another reason why I know this person kind of favors Tsukihime, because when given the opportunity, he decides to point the gun at the Fate characters once again. It actually becomes hilarious the more you go through it, if you're really paying attention. Say he's a counter guardian to go against Shiro and his people because they are hoarding the greater grail that is Sakura by extension, and so they have become a threat to the world, because now all of these different people are going to show up to try to pillage that power, and by them hoarding Sakura, by extension, they have become a threat to the counterforce as well, at least by Emiya's word. But then he kind of takes it back later on in the story in typical Emiya tsundere fashion. But I will say that he's on to something there. The reason that Emiya takes the role that he takes then is that we don't get full Dark Sakura in Ataraxia. We get a controlled Dark Sakura, a Sakura where she's learning how to harness her powers while still
okay, so that's nice. Yeah.
But when she went full Dark Sakura, the Earth is gonna recognize this as a threat. Boom, this is where Emiya comes in. I would say that's a pretty accurate circumstance, especially considering that she was already starting to lose control. You know, we never got to see anything like this in Heaven's Field, because by the time that Dark Sakura finally came out, Emiya was already gone. So that's just how that was. And you know, it's funny, even with Sakura doing all that she did to CL, doing all of that reflecting, and she even thought that she killed CL after the fact, when they had to tell her that there was only a pool of blood in the spot where CL was supposed to be when that fight was over when she finally came back too. So that kind of just addresses the fact of CL having those dead apostle characteristics without actually saying it outright. I thought that was a real subtle way to get that point across. And then for another portion, you have the flashback to 2 months ago where they go into the dead apostle that's actually committing these crimes and explains how they are in fact looking to use the Greater Grail, just as Emiya had mentioned, to exploit the loop and learn a theory that would make them dead apostle ancestor level. At first, I was under the impression that this was Scion going into her Dust of Osiris phase, but this doesn't seem to be the case. Moreover, you have Bazette show up anyway and literally frog rock her through the chest. She also mentioned how it was a new moon, so she couldn't regenerate. So I found that to be a very interesting note to leave off on. Ton of possibilities, and you gotta think this was nearly 20 years ago that this came out, and all of these possibilities stem from that point. I can't imagine the brilliance you could get out of using something like the Tsukihime remake, the new bits that we have from Melty Blood, Lumina, FGO, El Malloy, all these different things.
Yeah, just imagine that right now.
The test of time, and I'm glad I took the time to go through it. For whatever reason, even though it was placed in front of me,
it can't regenerate. Yeah.
See the conversations about Shiki being able to kill servants, and I'm gonna tell you, a lot of it is these dudes be taking these interviews to heart, and sometimes, man, these creators just get in these interviews and say anything. I'm gonna be honest, even if it's something that
it's their characters, like, their story.
Some of the stuff they say they would agree with 5 years later. They're just saying something. They're just giving an answer. And then there's the other half where a lot of these interviews are dated. You know, all of this stuff is like from early 2000s. Bro, we're going on 2025. It's obsolete. It's retcon. Not all of them, but a good portion of them. Until we get some newer interviews, a lot of that stuff is not gonna hold value as much as it did back then. And I mean, simple deduction can tell you which would and which wouldn't. By the way, this is only the first few chapters of the manga. I just kind of wanted to get it out there in case people didn't know about it. I don't know what happens going forward. If you guys want me to continue going through it, we can do that, and I'll circle back around and make a video on that as well. But this in particular is more so of a first impression more than anything.
Okay, and that is it for this one. So yeah, that was definitely a lot, and yeah, I'm pretty sure you guys can say, I mean, yeah, not really much to say. I don't want to really talk over Saya that much, but I know it's still a reaction. You know, still got to say something. But yeah, just trying to, well, not really getting introduced to these characters. I mean, I've kind of already known about them, like, let's see here. I'll try to get like a good image, but basically the vampire that just basically massacred everyone, right? Yeah, and it's just basically her job to make sure the world is safe. I'm trying to see if I get a good image. Let's see. I guess right here, her. Yeah, it's like I already knew about her from, like, you know, Otaku Daikun or something. And yeah, actually that was a while back, so that's why I was like, yeah, I can't even remember the name. I'm already having to deal with, yeah, remembering all this other stuff, yeah. But basically, yeah, some of them, or most of them, I already know. Now Ciel, not exact. I've seen her before, but like seeing her in this way, even if it isn't exactly accurate, since it's not really the original, you know, author or whatever, like, yeah, really making this, still, I have seen her and I can see what she can do and is capable of. And yeah, now, well, pretty much early on when Saya mentioned it, yeah, I was actually looking for that too. Like, yeah, let's see, you know, that development. You know, it doesn't have to be straight away. You know, it may take something like this, you know, for them to really get like mature or something, right? Or she'd all just like realize, you know, there's gonna be people stronger than me. There's gonna be times to where I'm getting completely overpowered, and you know, they're just taking care of these humans. Obviously, you know, he doesn't want them to be killed. You know, of course, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. Or there may have been something. It's just, yeah, you have to go like go the whole roundabout way of bringing them back to normal. And yeah, just kind of like, you just gotta accept that, you know, there's really no getting out of that situation. You know, these humans, if they turned and they're trying to kill you or other people, it's like, you know, what else can you do at that point? And there are some other options. I'm just saying, like, yeah, he just sort of realizing, especially from the war too, like you can't save everyone. I mean, of course we basically have everybody here, you know, but yeah, some people you just can't make friends with, or yeah, some people may change up depending on the situation. It just depends. But let's see. Yeah, that was definitely nice to see that, like that partial was it shadow? Yeah, sort of like using it, but then not exactly. You know, partial. But at the same time, you're not really getting all of the power from it, or basically, you know, what it's capable of. Yeah, you're not getting all of that. But yeah, actually, let me see. I'll just go straight back to the beginning here. So you got the cover, and yeah, young Gil. Yeah, ever since Prisma, yeah, I kind of just understood. Like, yeah, he is different. Like, I mean, kind of the same around mindset, sort of. But yeah, I mean, he is younger, and yeah, I mean, it is Gilgamesh, but not exactly in a way. Still has like that childlike mind to him at the same time. And yeah, I mean, it's not just unnatural for him to just, yeah, give you like, you know, part of his collection or whatever. Yeah, give you his own cups, right? His own cup, wine, whatever, let you drink. But still, it's like, yeah, from the original Gil that we know, it's like, yeah, I don't know, you gotta be special or something, right? It just gotta be a special occasion or something for him to do something like that. Or if he's just literally feeling generous or something. Here we go. But yeah, this was nice seeing an interaction from everyone. This was a nice shot. I was looking at that with the moon behind. I'm like, okay. But I like this, seeing like a different version, like kind of the same from what I already know, but I guess kind of like what Saya was saying, like, yeah, not really in favor of Fate, or at least not really having that equal, you know, from yeah, Fate and what was it, Tsukihime, not exactly looking like, you know, both are being favored or whatever at the same time, equally applying that. But yeah, this is definitely crazy. Yeah, make Gundam out here looking stupid. I was even trying to think about, I'm like, wait, what? So you, what, killed Berserker, or took care of Berserker, and then Shido gets mad? I'm like, wait, would he get mad because of that? Yeah, even bringing out, well, obviously, yeah, bringing out Unlimited Blade works, since it seems like nothing else is working, but yeah, just completely got rid of it. It's just like, you know, what do you do? It's like, no matter what you're doing, just takes care of it immediately. But yeah, I think, yeah, that's pretty much about it. So yeah, good to see this, although it's from someone different, still like seeing how they would view certain fights and all, you know, not exactly official, but at least it's a way of imagining it. But other than that, I guess I'll just end this off here. He actually had a good little shot here, end it off on. So I hope you guys did enjoy. Make sure to like, subscribe again, and yeah, I'll just see you guys in the next one.